We want to make sure to have the question and answer session, but I really quickly wanted to show you where, and we have hard copies of all of this, which we'll give you at the end, but I wanted to show you where the resources are. So, sorry, that's surveys, training. So Michael showed you at the beginning. If you go to the resources tab, this resources tab only exists for you if you are a SMARTS subscriber. So if you go into this website and you don't see it, it means you're not logged in.
Yeah.
So resources, there are all of the videos, but we've also created a bunch of different things to help you understand this curriculum. So the curriculum overview basically talks about the background, and then it shows you in a few pages what each unit is, the learning goals of that unit, the lessons in that unit, and hopefully what comes out of that for your students. So getting a sense of what is in this is probably really good for you as a teacher or someone that's going to be maybe just implementing these strategies at home. So you know, our first unit is on is the intro unit, and then we have a goal setting unit. We have a cognitive flexibility unit. We have organizing and prioritizing, which is actually kind of broken up into two different sections. One is materials and time, planning time. So we do a lot of weekly and monthly planning in that section. And then part B is organizing ideas and information. So that's like organizing in writing, or organizing how to write organized notes, that kind of stuff. Organizing notes if your teacher is giving a lecture and you have to write as they're speaking. That's in that too. So Unit 5 is remembering. That's what we did today. And Unit 6 is self-monitoring and self-checking. So how can I, if I'm doing my work, how can I go back and check it and make sure that things are actually working, right? So we have lessons in each of those. The number of lessons in each unit varies. It's good for you to read this, get a sense of what's in there. So that's the overview. We also have a getting started packet. So if you're new to this and you're like, this is the getting started packet. This is our cartoon version of Elizabeth. It was right there. Yeah. So what it basically goes through is what you should do at the beginning of SMARTS Online, how to choose your units and lessons, how to schedule your year, what you do when you start teaching, and then it asks you to share with us, basically. Yeah. So you can click on any of these and be brought straight to that section. It basically gives you guidance on how to schedule yourself. So this is if you have one 60-minute session per week. This is if you have 2 different sessions. This is if you want to do a week at once. So some of our teachers and schools have done it that way, where they like basically do an entire unit in 1 week, and then they do a bunch of their own stuff for the next 4 weeks, and then they do another SMARTS week. So it's like a kind of concentrated time. So we talk about the benefits of those things. We talk about the setting. We give you tips if that's the thing you choose. And then this is really the critical part that I wanted to show you, is that we break it down based on the types of things that your students are learning. So if they're preparing for tests, here's 5 lessons that are really great to help them prepare for tests. And you can see that it spans different units. So being flexible and shifting expectations, using the triple note toad, building strategy cards, all of those might be useful in studying for a test. We have it for writing assignments. We have it for reading a text. And we also have it based on your school calendar. So beginning of the school year, here are some good lessons. Here are some good lessons around report cards. So we really tried to break it down and give you guidance on that. I know it feels like a lot, right? There's a lot of information, but we're trying to make it as good for you and as usable for you as possible. And this is like, let's say you're going to do a whole unit at once. Maybe this is something you want to think about when to do which unit. But you might notice that what we're saying here is you don't need, and I'm going to say this like really loud and in your face, you don't need to do unit 1. And then unit 2, and then unit 3.
But you can.
You can.
You don't have to.
You can, but you can adapt it to your schedule and what your students need at what point in the year.
And why did you sort of manipulate the
this was my suggestions here, because for me, I think, so basically we had to choose an order for this. But the order is somewhat arbitrary. We're not saying that self-monitoring and self-checking is the 6th most important thing because it comes as number 6, right? So for me as an English teacher, when I was teaching, I would have wanted to start with organizing time and materials, and then I would have wanted to do some of this remembering stuff, and then maybe some goal setting around mid-year when they're getting their grades, and we want to kind of refocus the second part of the year, right? So there's a rationale there, but so that's all to help you there. And then we have a planner, which we would and will, if we have time at the end, let you go through. And basically, it kind of walks you through how you can map out your own year. This first page is basically looking at the year and getting you to put in important things in your calendar in there, and then figuring out what you would want to do based on that. And then the next few pages basically are honing in which lesson, why do I want to do that at that point, and what materials do I need to know that I have to have in advance. Some of our self-checking lessons are difficult because we ask you to collect students' own tests. So we're going to say, collect 3 tests and use that for that lesson. So you need to know in advance if you're going to do that. So we want you thinking about this early and thinking about the materials you might need early on. We'll walk you through that more. We wanted to do we're going to kind of switch the order because we want to make sure that we give you a chance to do the question and answer, and then we'll give you all this information. If you want to do some planning now, you can, and we can help you with that.
Yeah, so let's spend at least 10 minutes on Q&A, unless, we'll see how that does for us. And then we're going to hand out the materials she just showed. You can start doing that. If you have questions, you can ask us. If you want to ask each other, that's great too. So let's open it up for questions and take it from there. Anyone? Questions?
Oh,
I answered all your questions?
you've answered it on my phone.
All right, good. Great. I'm glad you said
But
that
it's just
first.
the lesson itself.
Yeah.
You can do it in 60-minute lesson or a 30-minute lesson.
Yeah, so I mean, we say that most of the lessons last about 60 minutes. There are maybe 2 lessons in Unit 4B, which is the organizing their materials. Organizing information. We have a few lessons there that might take longer than an hour, but we tell you in advance. It's like an hour plus, and this is a long lesson. You might want to break it up. We aim for about an hour. We also know that most schools only have 50-minute hours, right? That's usually 45 to 50 minutes is probably what teachers teach in. And so the other thing that we feel about this is we're going to give you everything that you need, but you are the teacher and you are always the teacher. So if you don't think you need to do one element of it, or you can cut it in certain places, feel free to do that. I don't think you're going to destroy your children forever for not getting to every part of that lesson. But if you need guidance on that, please reach out to us. We will tell you, okay, maybe here's a section that you can cut and still get to the meat of it.
Yeah.
So we would rather not have teachers go up there and be like, I have a whole lesson for a day and it only lasted 30 minutes. So they're aimed for about 60 minutes. Yeah. Are there questions about anything, SMARTS online, how to access something online, anything of that sort? Yeah.
Have you used it at all, or has anybody used it in grades younger than grade 6?
Yes.
Yeah. A couple of the pilot sites last year were using it with 4th and 5th graders. I think a lot of the strategies are very applicable. You just have to be careful. There's a lesson on studying with a study guide. Well, most elementary schoolers don't have study guides. But, the lessons on purposeful highlighting, or, kind of taking notes, maybe not. Purposeful highlighting, there we have a skim and scoop reading comprehension one's great. Organizing your backpack, planning your time. I think those would be very valuable. I would just preview the unit first and look at the passages, because you don't want to give them something that, goes over their head. Same thing, we've had students, and I've used it myself with college students as well, but same thing, look at the passages and make sure that they are appropriate, age appropriate. But otherwise, the strategies are very useful. In late elementary, I can't imagine doing it with, kindergartners, but I don't know. Let me know if that, let me know.
To add to what Michael was saying, when they talk, taking students through the strengths, weaknesses profiles,
Yes.
as well as, what do you think
Sure.
It can, we
Yeah.
use those. We have some schools that are even using it, you know, in first grade, those kinds of, those estimates.
That's true.
And so
Yeah.
you can, the purpose of this is to build executive function strategies from the get-go. And so you use, and we, as Elana was saying, we're trying to give it all, so you can see how massive this curriculum is. So even if you take a small piece, you're still doing a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we also are pretty, I mean, I have an example for you of the filled out version of the planner so that you can kind of see how you could use that. But it's lofty. There's 30 lessons. I was an English teacher. To give away 30 of my lessons to this, that's a lot of lessons, right? So my feeling is you also might, and that's why I really stress, like, you don't need to go sequentially unit by unit, because you gotta pull out what's gonna be most effective in your classroom and what you think your students need the most. It's a dynamic curriculum, right? And so doing all 30 and forcing your way through each one is probably not going to be effective for you and for your students, right? And it could become tedious, and we don't want it to be that. We want it to be a help more than anything else. So it does require a little bit of time at the beginning to pick out, what do I think they're actually going to need and use? And you know what? Sometimes you might do one and it doesn't feel like that's going to be the best one, and you might need to actually change it up based on the way the year's going. But that's what teaching is, and that, you guys know that.
I teach future teachers, so I often tell them to teach the self-awareness, kind of these questionnaires, figure out how you learn, and I tell them also to teach self-advocacy and how to do that appropriately, how to understand what you need and then how to ask for it. So I think the combination of those things together is very powerful. And in my opinion, earlier you do it at younger ages. I always laugh because I tell people as parents, you just have your kids go in the grocery store and ask for the raisins. Where are the raisins? You know, and just those kinds of being able to ask for what you need in an appropriate way instead of give me a pencil, you know, so they can combine those two things, and I think it's really effective.
And to further that, in a private setting, which is where I'm working, where they're coming to me, usually the parents are the ones picking out, you know, there's something not right here. They need some help through either an assessment or something that they've done and they realize it. And to what Mindy built on, you're not just teaching them the academics of what this program is. This relates to life. You know, and the more you can relate it to outside of the school setting, the more the kids go, oh, so you mean when I planned to play with Johnny, I should have done it 2 days in advance and called his mom and checked, and all of a sudden the light bulbs go off. Wow, I got it now. And that's where, you know, you really see it. And it's typically the parents that are seeing it. And the kids are like, yeah, I want to learn, I want to be good. I mean, you know, we're in a competitive environment. I want to do well in school, I want to do well in everything I do. And that's what this program teaches, or what I'm finding is that it teaches them success. Whether it's in the classroom or whether it's, you know, playing with your buddy next door. It teaches them how to do that, how to be successful. So it's not just, you know, a grade.
Yeah, and I would say just as a teacher, when I had kids that were consistently doing not great on my tests or quizzes, it was up to me to some extent to go and seek them out and say, I'm noticing this, what's happening, how can I help you? And not just assume that, okay, they're bad at English. They're
So
going
it's
to be.
not unreasonable for parents to expect teachers to take initiative and talk to their kids, right?
I mean,
Right.
the challenge is it does depend on your school district and how many students you have, and if you're in a class of 40 kids, it might take a while to start noticing that and to be able to find the time to have that conversation. But we hope, and that's why teaching is such a hard job. It's so hard. But yeah, we hope for that with our students, and just if you are a classroom teacher, you know, don't beat yourself up if you're not getting it every time for every student. You try your best, and hopefully this kind of stuff will actually help you get to a place where you know what kind of conversation to have. So that's the other thing.
All right, let's do some planning.
So I wanted to just, and I'll just like kind of pass a few and you can pass them down. These are examples that I filled out, again, as an English teacher, and mostly that's because that's what I was, so that was helpful. That was the way I could do it. And Michael will in a minute pass out all the rest of the kind of blank forms, but I just wanted to show you what I did here. So on this first page, I kind of, and by the way, this is a very old school kind of form of way of doing this. If I were doing it actually myself, I'd probably use Google Maps, or I mean Google Calendar. But it does help you have a nice snapshot of the entire year. So what I say in this is, you know, in one color, mark the days that school will not be in session. Mark the major events from the school calendar or your curricular calendar, like exams or report cards, major tests or papers. It's important to consider these when planning your SMART schedule, because that'll help you determine which lessons to teach when, if you're not going to teach it sequentially, unit by unit. And then using a highlighter, outline the boxes for the days you anticipate teaching a SMARTS lesson, then map out the lessons you'd like to teach. So what do you notice if you just kind of look back and take a kind of bird's eye view? That's the top of, I guess, the top of the mountain view. What do you notice about the pace of this year that I've mapped out here? Front loaded, exactly. So for me, if I were to be trying to utilize all these lessons, I would probably front load and do a lot more of them at the beginning and fewer of them as you go along, because hopefully they're learning those strategies. You can continue to implement things like the strategy reflections that pull them back to the strategies they've learned, but hopefully if you can front load, they're learning them, they're starting to implement, and you don't need to teach as many of those lessons as the year goes on. What do you notice about May? What's happening there? It's blank, yeah. So for me, I'm kind of like, it's good to see if I can fit in lessons later. If I don't get to them, if there's a week where you have school canceled because of snowstorms or some sort of thing, you want to plan in time for that. I think that's kind of appropriate. I took the approach that I would try to maybe on Mondays teach my SMARTS lessons, because that's the beginning of the week. It's good to start with strategy and then get into content. You can choose whatever works for you, right? But like this, for me as myself as a teacher, I would maybe do something like that. At the beginning you see that it was maybe more like twice a week, but then it kind of peters out towards more like once a week. But again, you don't necessarily need to teach all 30 lessons. You might also notice that I've repeated some of them. So I think 4A, 4A.1 or 4.1 is repeated there twice. That's, oh yeah, so actually I highlighted it. It has like little flowers around them. If I repeated it, so 4.1 is done twice, and that's our backpack relay. That's a really fun activity. It's exciting and engaging. And what it does is it gets kids to organize themselves. And for me, if I was a teacher, I'd want to do it at the beginning of the year to teach them how, and then I'd probably want to do it in the middle of the year and maybe a few more times to keep it up. Get that, going. You don't have to teach the whole lesson every time you've taught the lesson, but you can do the activity. So that's the other thing. Don't be afraid to repeat some of the activities throughout the course of the year, because actually doing them more than once will help kids get a sense of it. Do you have a question?
I do.
Yeah.
If you're working in a middle school, have you had experience with this, where if you're working in a middle school with multiple grades, where can you repeat the lessons as they move up? I guess once you run the curriculum, you sort of say, I've introduced you to the 6th grade, 7th. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
So we have had a school, at least one school, who's trying to implement throughout the course of like the whole thing, and I think what they've been doing is breaking it up by unit and doing certain units certain years. So you could maybe choose a few lessons that you want to repeat throughout all the years, but in general maybe stick to some, 6th grade is about organizing and prioritizing, and maybe 8th grade is about self-monitoring and self-check. I'm not sure, but doing it kind of breaking it up that way might be the easiest, so that kids aren't getting into 7th grade and being like, oh, this is a 6th grade thing, Yeah.
And do you have experience like implementing this just for kids that struggle, like in an after-school program?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have done it in after school. That was one of the earlier pilot programs. And that is actually a very effective time for it. The challenge is you really need to make sure that they aren't going to apply it to their schoolwork on their own. So you need to have an idea of what they're doing in school. So if they have a science test, if you get your hands on that study guide, that would be great. Because if you do it outside of school, the danger is they don't connect it to their schoolwork.
No, I'm thinking after school in the school.
But they're all
like
students
in the school.
So yeah,
school.
then that's a great time for it. Yeah.
As Michael said, a number of those programs that I showed you from our earlier, from previous years, we were in a number of after-school programs. In fact, that's where we started SMARTS. It was a perfect program for melding. That's where the mentoring piece, in combination with the strategies, the wonderful. It's a fantastic combination. And if you want some other information about mentoring, by the way, there's a new book that I co-edited with Karen Harris called The Power of Peers. It's more theoretical. Where we have a chapter in there about using SMARTS, both the mentoring and the executive function teaming them in different settings.
So just so you understand what those next pages are, I just want to kind of show you that what I did here was going from that kind of large view of everything. I broke it down by month. So what lesson do I want to teach? What day do I want to teach it on? And then why do I want to teach that there? Sometimes when you're planning, you have a great idea, and if you don't write down that rationale, you get to it later and you're like, wait, why am I teaching this then? And so it's good to remind yourself why you're doing that. And so what I tried really hard to do was think about, again, this is kind of a hypothetical, but it's based on what I actually did teach when I was teaching my English class. And so things like as I'm starting to do vocab quizzes, maybe I want to teach them one memory strategy early and then kind of break it up and 2 months later do another memory strategy to kind of get them, oh yeah, that's another way I can do that, right? And so I'm incorporating that. Vocab is something I do throughout the course of the year. I can break up those memory strategies and spread them out. But maybe, I think I did 3.3, which is our purposeful highlighting lesson. I did that for establishing good reading habits, right? So, okay, we're going to start a novel, and I really want them to understand how to highlight things that are important to them. So before we start that novel, I'm going to teach them that lesson, right? So really trying to think about what it is that you're teaching if you are a classroom teacher. If you are not a classroom teacher and you're a learning center person, trying to get kind of a sense of that school calendar. Okay, we have midterms coming up. What are some things that would be really useful for you to do before midterms and learn some strategies before midterms? So again, I really you have to figure out what's right for you. And I think actually what I would say is probably in your first year teaching, it might help to kind of just go sequentially through and learn what you're teaching and understand that. But after that, I really do suggest breaking things up based on what you need and what your students need. Did you have another question?
Well,
Yep.
I'm just noticing, and I like that you just pull out one lesson from a unit and plop it in where you feel it's needed.
Yeah, so we're going to hand, or did you already hand that? Oh, thank you. So you got the SMARTS planner and you got the curriculum overview. These things used in tandem with your planner, I think, is really critical because you want to see what lessons discuss what, and then maybe what do they suggest, what do we suggest you do in terms of order. We tried to give you guidance there, but it's going to be based on you and your own schedule. Yeah, honestly, for all of these things in my head, as we're moving forward, like we had to kind of start somewhere. So right now it's all print out paper, but I love it so that it becomes something that is an online planning tool, and you can plop it in, and then it shows you, it connects to your calendar, all of that stuff. So, we're such a small organization, we can kind of only go incrementally, but know that that's our goal. That's where we want to get to. We want it to be all interfaced. And for some of the lessons, hopefully at some point for the kids to be able to go online and maybe create cartoon, tricky word sheets or something online.
Online strategy notebooks
Yeah,
and
all of that stuff.
student profiles. And
Yeah.
Since we're still revising all of
Yeah.
this, when we're active and we're doing, implementing these lessons, how will we know if there are changes or updates to the materials in case we printed them all
Yeah.
or whatever? How would
We will probably only do, my guess is what we're going to do is at the start of each school year, we're going to do here's version 3.0, here's, but it's possible that if we notice something really major, that we'll have version 3.2 or something, and we would send out a blast saying, FYI, here's what's new. It's like, on your apps, you have an app and then they say, update the app, here are the new things.
Yeah.
So we would do that if we change mid-year, but at least for now, my guess is we're going to be mostly changing at the beginning, during the summer, basically, is the changeover. Yeah.
All right, so we're pretty much out of time. So Lynn has a few closing remarks, but before she does, we really appreciate all of you coming to this. This is something that we've been wanting to do for a long time, and I think a lot of it has given us a lot to think about, but I hope it's been very rich because I've been enjoying it, even though I've been yelling at you all the time. Sorry about that. Someone had to do it.
Yeah.
So we'll be in touch. You'll be getting an email from us with a survey of your thoughts, so you'll have some time to mentally digest that. Also, we're not going to throw you out of here immediately because we just gave you all this planning stuff. So you can take some time to start scribbling it. I think we're supposed to be out of here by 12:30, so we might kick you out around then. But that gives you a little bit of time, and you can also approach us individually. I do hope you got the impression that we are, a nice organization that wants to work with you. So as we send that evaluation tool, our evaluation survey, that's not the end of it. Also, we want to hear how this goes throughout the year. We hope to see you at future events or reaching out over email or this or that.
Fill out those forms.
Yeah, fill out those
really,
forms and
we
tell us
will-
what worked and tell us what didn't. You might see your suggestions in the next round of the curriculum. That's what's so awesome about online curriculum. So thank you all very, very much for coming and spending this Saturday morning with us. And I'm going to hand it over to Lynn to say
Well,
bye.
actually, Michael said it all, so I don't have to say anything else, first I want to thank Michael, who, as you know, is our SMARTS director, Elana, who's our SMARTS curriculum coordinator, Elizabeth, who's back there, who's has multiple titles, but basically does all the videography and a lot of the media and sort of runs a lot and coordinates all of these activities. Our benefits coming up in 3 weeks. Elizabeth is working on that. So, and to Kelly Robinson, who's our SMARTS consultant right now, and is probably going to be in touch with some of you around a lot of these issues as we move forward. And thank you, Bad Duran, for helping with this. And most importantly, thank you to all of you for being here yesterday, for being here today, for your great questions, your great comments, and most importantly, as you become part of our larger SMARTS community, we hope that you will all interact with one another, that you'll sort of share ideas. If we would like this to become, as we've done with our LD conference, sort of a network of alumni and a community that grows, that evolves, and that changes, and that SMARTS changes with us and with you. So as Michael and Elana have said, we would love to get your ideas, your suggestions, as you heard from Elana. And like many others, it's not like those ideas are falling on deaf ears. Every single one of those ideas is culled, is thought about very carefully, and is implemented. So you might see some of those ideas. And most importantly, as we move into different formats, our long-term goals, our short-term and long-term goals are to develop a more formalized teacher training sort of series of units for both for teachers at all levels, as well as sort of at the college, at the university and college level, so that teachers are being trained in these kinds of concepts, to develop eventually to move into the more elementary sort of examples with elementary schools, parent curriculum, and I know that you're interested in a Spanish version. You've done some initial work. That's sort of one of our goals as well.
So all of these are, and most importantly, sort of having more online kind of materials, as Elana and Mike were talking about. So those are all of our goals. It depends for us on funding. If any of you know any millionaires or billionaires who think this would be wonderful, send them our way. Or any foundations, because everything's always dependent on sort of, time and speed. So all of these suggestions, as you move forward with this, send us your ideas and share with each other and share with us. And thank you again for being here with us today.